In the early 60s, he invented a character called Barry Mckenzie, who in strip form in Private Eye and later in movies did everything he could to reinforce prejudices between British and the Australians. The Brits were whinging puffs who took a bath only when forced. The Australians were beer-swilling Philistines who thought a bidet was a drinking fountain. Well, since then, thanks to the effort of Sir Les and Dame Edna, things have slightly improved. But before I talk to those two eminent Australians about their view of the world we live in, let's meet the man who's responsible for them, their friend and mentor, Mr. Barry Humphries. Well, I'm delighted to have you on the show for in fact, the first time. I've had your two friends on. I had Dame Edna on and Sir Les. They caused some comment, not to say public outrage. And what's curious, actually, is the difference between the three of you. I mean, it's odd, I think. I look at you here, quietly dressed.
Yes.
Sophisticated, man of the world. And I wondered about the difference between you and those exotic creatures.
It's very good of you, Michael, to call me a sophisticated man of the world before I've said anything. But I am a sophisticated man of the world. In the loudest check I could possibly find. But I'm really basically just a low comedian. I was the only person at school who never told dirty stories.
Well, didn't you like them?
I never liked them, and I didn't like the people who told them. It was only until I was, I had to wait until I was about 35 before I started being filthy. And I've enjoyed it thoroughly, I might say, ever since.
But how did the acting start?
The acting started really by accident. I was given parts in some school plays, and invariably I played eccentric parts, or housewives. It seemed that I was very early on cast in the role of the housewife. In school plays, for example, which were about miners being trapped, I was always, at the pit head with a bundle. And then sometimes I was the femme fatale in the ghost train at Melbourne Grammar School. But I always felt uncomfortable in these clothes of my mother's, as a matter of fact, because they never fitted very well. And so I went later to university, where I studied philosophy and law. It was decided I should be a lawyer. But it was in those years that I started creating theatrical happenings. I think I realized that I was a frustrated performer. I invented practical jokes, which weren't meant to be filmed or even talked about on programs such as this. They were entirely for my own pleasure.
You've done some spectacular ones, haven't you?
Yes, the practical jokes are often rather dull when they're related. I warn you in advance. But what I liked to do, for example, was to have breakfast served to myself on the train into town. So that at the first station, for example, a grapefruit would be presented to me as I sat there reading the morning paper. At the next station, and at each station, incidentally, I had an accomplice waiting. The next station, cornflakes, toast, and by the time I got into town, a cup of coffee. And, of course, the other people in the compartment were totally mystified. This was many years, of course, before candid camera. So no one quite knew what was happening.
This was street theatre?
And it was kind of street theatre before street theatre had been invented.
There's also a famous story, which I will tell, but you can confirm or deny, that you were on one airline in Australia when you shunned it, I think is the word, yes, into a bag, and then proceeded to eat it. What people didn't know is, in fact, that you filled the bag full of potato salad beforehand.
Yes, it was actually... It was, in fact, tinned sweet corn, I hasten to say. This was when, I started... It is awful, isn't it? But, I mean, all I can say is it was funny at the time. I was never allowed after that to travel on that particular airline. It was many years later and heavily disguised that I was admitted.
What gave you the idea, Barry, though, of first of all, of creating this repertory of characters? I mean, where in fact, first of all, did you meet Dame Edna?
Well, I was in a production of Shakespeare because from university I drifted into amateur university theatre and then into professional theatre. That is to say, they paid £5 a week. And I toured in a production of Twelfth Night. On the bus trips between one town and another, every member of the cast had a party turn. Someone sang a song, someone recited a poem. I used to sit in the back seat of the bus and impersonate the Lady Mayoress of the next town, because everywhere we went, there was always a party after the show, and the Lady Mayoress would always stand up and say what a wonderful thing it was that these people were bringing Shakespeare to the Australian bush. And then she'd get the name of the play wrong. So I had this falsetto, and which I'd learnt from school plays and that kind of thing, and I would sit in the back seat and do this voice, which amused everyone greatly, so that at Christmas time, when we had to do the pantomime, our producer said to me, why didn't I do that character? And I said, well, I could do it in the wings. I could do the funny voice, and one of the actresses could impersonate this person, who we'd christened Edna, because it was probably the dullest name we could possibly think of. I'm sorry, Mrs. Healy. So I was Edna, and I wrote a sketch for Edna. And I once again borrowed some appropriate female attire. Well, I resembled a pantomime dame more than anything else. But the character was born. It seemed suddenly that I'd hit upon a vein of humour that no one had tried before, certainly not in Australia. So on and off in the years that followed, interrupting a pretty busy life as a professional actor, a character actor, I, from time to time, did the character of Edna. It always surprised me that the character became so popular. It had always just been a pastime of mine. You know, sometimes I think that I take the theatre itself a little too lightly. It gives me enormous pleasure to act on the stage. And to have discovered that I have the gift of making people laugh is a marvellous thing, for which I'm very grateful.
There's another extraordinary thing too, isn't there? I mean, you have in Barry Mckenzie, who used to chunder all over the place and fall down legless wherever he could. There's the Les, who we're going to meet in a moment, who no doubt will be sozzled. And you yourself are a teetotaler, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm totally a teetotaler. I drink huge quantities of liquid, but it's non-alcoholic, and that's not always, hasn't always been the case.
No, so but there's a reason why you are teetotal. Why is that?
Well, I discovered, fortunately for me, it must be about 12 years ago now, that I was allergic to the chemical ethyl alcohol, which is the important ingredient in that wonderful invention, booze. And for very many years of the career which I've just been outlining sketchily, I used alcohol with great success. I was always very nervous, as I found a lot of people in my profession are. And I found grog was wonderful. You know, it was a miraculous discovery for me. I found it later than most people I know who still drink. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I started drinking at parties. Everyone did. And it was only 15 years later or so that it caught up with me, and I found that I drank differently to other people. I can, I suppose, best illustrate it by saying, you know, normal people go to parties and get drunk. I used to get drunk and go to parties. And I was the last person in the world who thought I had a problem. You know, I found out later, when I stopped drinking, that there were a lot of people who were quite worried about the amount that I drank, or what happened to me when I drank. I just felt I was more confident and more amusing. In fact, I myself was deeply unamused by my own behavior. You know, I was a very despairing person.
Was there one moment when you knew you had to stop, when you took the conscious decision never to drink again?
Well, I got to the stage where I needed the morning drink. You know, I found that I had to have a drink in the morning. I found myself at some of those pubs in Covent Garden that opened very early. You'd be surprised, some of the people we know who were there. It's amazing how one feigns surprise, you know. Oh, fancy seeing you here. Oh, yes, you know. Just happened to be passing, old boy. You know. And you have to wait till their back is turned to get the vodka up, you know, because And then you learn when you get to the stage of the scarf trick. I don't know if you know the scarf trick.
It's a scarf trick.
Well, you have a scarf on, and the barmaid puts the drink on the bar, and you wait for her to turn her back, and then you pick up the drink with the scarf, and you hold it firmly on the bar, and then you pull the scarf, and the drink comes smoothly up to the mouth. Well, you see, the terrible thing, the awful thing about alcoholism is that the last person really to know about it is the practicing alkie. You know, he thinks this is normal behavior. He doesn't realize he's insane. And a few people I know die with those views. Luckily, I managed with quite a bit of help from a lot of other people and a very good doctor and an excellent hospital in my hometown of Melbourne. I managed to put the last drink down, and I haven't picked up a drink in 12 years. To me, it's one of the great things of life. It's out of the beverage class and in the poison class for me. But I was, in fact, such a boozer that I was offered a senior job at the BBC, and that shows you. But I thought I wouldn't laugh again in the early days, Michael, and really? It is a glum topic to bring up.
No, I don't think it's a glum topic.
But it's important, I've not discussed it on television before, and perhaps it's helpful to anyone who might think that they do have a problem. But, you can pick up the gift of life again, and life is very, very funny sober. It's not all doom, gloom, and ginger ale. I can assure you. And incidentally, in those last 12 years, professionally, things have been absolutely marvellous for me. Things have been very, very good.
Now, but finally, Barry, the next guest we've got on is my favourite Australian, actually. He's Sir Les Patterson. But before he comes on, could you just briefly tell us where you found him and what he represents?
Les was created because we have in Australia, as you have here, clubs. And the clubs have a big audience. And the people who go to the clubs don't really always go to the theatre. And I was told, although for many years I'd played theatres, conventional theatres in Australia, a friend of mine said, you haven't really got to the real Australian audience, you haven't done the clubs. So I was persuaded to do one of the biggest in Sydney. And I had to invent someone to warm up the audience. I thought, I just can't go on there cold. So I invented Les Patterson. I made Les Patterson the entertainment officer for the club. I made him very drunk, and he staggered on, and it hadn't occurred to me he exactly resembled the secretary of the club. I hadn't consciously based him on anyone, but apparently he was absolutely identical to the secretary. And everyone listened very sympathetically to his apology. He was actually apologizing to the audience that they didn't have an overseas act. He was saying, well, sorry, Sammy Davis can't be here this year, because, in fact, they do pay these stars big money to go out.
I know they do.
You'd know, Michael.
Thank you.
So he just happened like that. And he again caught on. It was a surprise to me, just as the success of Edna, because people liked the reality of the character. They liked the fact that he, although it was a bit over the top, the person could exist, and basically the person was warm-hearted. Australians weren't so sympathetic. When I did the Barry Mckenzie films, for example, we were given a government grant to make the first one, and the official who'd given us the money rushed across the tarmac as we flew to London to make it, and his final words to me were, by the way, Barry, I hope there won't be too many colloquialisms in the script. Because there was still this image of the Australian as a genteel person. I think most of us have grown out of that by now.
And you certainly helped to change that is for sure. Barry Humphries, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Barry Humphries. My second guest tonight is one of the most celebrated Australian statesmen, of modern times. He started his career as the entertainments officer at a club in Sydney and has risen to the heights of being the Australian cultural attaché to the court of St. James. I couldn't agree more with the critic who said that he impugns the fundamental refinement of the Australian character. Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Les Patterson.
Good luck to you. And hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Got a
I've almost got a handful of Vaseline. Something. How are you feeling?
I'm not feeling too bad.
Yeah. Now, of course, images.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
What is it I've got in my hands?
Oh, it's an ointment I'm supposed to use. I was just giving myself a quick application before the shower. I'm supposed to use an applicator, but I generally do. No worries.
Yeah. Now, let's talk...
You'll be all right on your next trip to the Philippines, mate. Are you with me? No worries.
Now, this thing about image is obviously terribly important. I mean, that's part of your job. Now, what's the image that you're trying to project?
I think you'd better phrase that again, Michael. I think what is the image that I am bloody successful in projecting, ladies and gentlemen? And that is as Australia as a thinking organism. You know, it wasn't very many moons ago. What you do to old Barry Humphries, deadly. The poor bastard was ashes. I seen him out there. Oh, Christ, you must have given him a rough time.
Well, we talked about getting on the grog.
Oh, Christ, Get stuck into him. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very good to be here on the Parky Show. You know, you could say this is the International Year of Australia already, couldn't you, Mike?
Well, you could.
It's been fantastic, the publicity we're getting, and largely due to the efforts of my good self. You know, it wasn't many moons ago that they thought we were a bunch of rough diamonds down under. But, you know, we've got more culture than a penicillin factory in Australia. I'm telling you that. No worries.
Well, I suppose that they talk about culture, the main thing that people know Australia for now, the movie industry, the films, Australian films. Have you got anything to do with them at all?
Yes, I kicked it. I'm very proud of the role. I'm very proud of the role that I've played there. You know, the trouble with the film industry, as it is with the arts in general today, is that the poofter element. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mind what people do in the privacy of their own homes. Don't get me wrong on that score, ladies and gentlemen. Please. You know, I see eye to eye with old Ken Livingstone in that particular matter. But what I'd like to say is this, that, you know, there are a lot of... the industry needs a fair bit of weeding out, and, you know, it's rife with the poofters in Australia as it is here. You know, I had a lovely idea for a film a few years ago. It was going to be called... It was about a football team going to the bush. It was called Piss Up on Hanging Rock, as a matter of fact. And by the time... No? Are you with me? By the time the Poof Mafia, or the Poofia as I call them, had got onto that, they'd turned them all into Sheilas, drifting around in the nursery curtains and getting eaten by the abos in there.
Well, what about a film like Gallipoli, which has had tremendous critical acclaim both here and in America?
Again, you see, the movie industry's got out of my hands. Gallipoli, in my opinion, is a better description of that film. Two fellas, I don't say they're shirt lifters. I don't say that. I don't say they're shirt lifters, but they could be. They could be, and that's how it comes across, you know? Giving the Turks the wrong idea, you know? Mind you, they've had the wrong idea for a year or two, haven't they, eh? No worries.
Do you know many people within the film industry intimately, though? I mean, I'm thinking of actors or actresses.
Well, I do, naturally. I've had... You hear the boys in the band over there, for Christ's sake, eh? That'll do, fellas, eh? No, I've done a bit of casting, Mike, I have. I've done a bit of... I mean, it's not for nothing I'm known as the Protestant Lou Grade. I am. We've got a lot in common, you know. Well, with a couple of tycoons, and it's significant, isn't it, that old Lou's enterprise is being taken over by an Aussie corporation, an Aussie conglomerate. A conglomerate. And they're a bit afraid, of course, that it'll lose its Englishness, but old Lord Grey, English? Well, rumour has it he's a Bulgarian tap dancer. I don't... But he's very nice and a close personal friend, I hasten to say.
Well, you've got many...
But a lot of the actresses, you know, I mean... I know them all personally. I can't name names on this show because, you know, there's been moments when my fidelity to my wife has been put to a pretty severe test. And come off second best, I can tell you.
Can you think of any... I mean, was this a question of girls being forward, being overwhelmed by your sexuality?
They do get a bit. You know, I had an embarrassing experience in a London taxi. Yes. I had this little lass. She was a star of one of my films. And I was showing her the sights of London. You know, Buckminster Castle, St Paul's Abbey, Trafalgar Circus, and we're driving around. And I kid you not, you know, this little Sheila done a streak in the back seat of the car. I didn't know where to look. And we got to our destination. The driver says, that'll be so-and-so, you know. And he says, how are you going to pay me? And she... Oh, I'm sorry, I can't say it, but she done an Erica. She done an Erica, but not the top part. She flashed the map of Tasmania, ladies and gentlemen. Now, for those of you who aren't too crash on the geography, Tasmania is a triangular continent. A bit on the bushy side. No, please, oh, for goodness sake. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the driver said, haven't you got anything smaller? But no. The Cockney wit, you know, you can't beat it, but I think we've inherited it in Australia. I hope so, because it's a country I'm very proud of, and it's marvellous. You forgive me, all dressed up like a pox doctor's clerk on this show tonight. You know, it's a bit over the top, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but I've just come from an affair of state.
What was that?
Oh, just some little do in Oz House. But I think it was a dried fruit convention, as a matter of fact. You can't get away from them, can you?
You're a great statesman and diplomat, Sir Les.
You have to be, Mike. You're up front. I'm up there, up front, the whole bloody time. You know? You with me? It's stressful. It's a tremendous strain. I was disappointed I didn't get the job of Governor-General of Australia.
I would have thought you made a very...
You know, it was between me and the Prince of Wales, and an outsider come in. No worries, good luck to him. But I'm over here in London. I've been fronting up for Australia for many, many years. I've been taking the knocks and I've been taking the kudos, and it's been a tremendous amount of fun.
Have you modelled yourself on anybody in all those years?
Well, as I say, there's a bit of Lord Grey, there's a bit of Henry Kissinger in me. I see myself as Australia's answer, and General Haig. There's a bit of him in me, you know? There's a bit of General Haig in me.
Which bit?
Well, I don't mind a drop of the Haigs at any time, ladies and gentlemen. You with me? My mother always said, never trust a man who doesn't drink, and I don't. I like a drink. I'm not ashamed of that. As a matter of fact, you know, I'm as full as a pommy complaint box at the moment.
Do you have...
I mean that in a very nice way, too.
So, Les, do you have any artistic leaning to yourself? I mean, do you write anything at all? Do you write...
I write the odd poem, you know. From time to time, you know, I might be anywhere. I could be at an international airport. I could be on a TV talk show like this with you, Mike, and all of a sudden, suddenly I feel a stanza coming up, you know? I feel the odd, you know, hexameter rising in me, you know, and I think to myself, excuse me, I've got a poem here somewhere. A few reinforcements. You know, Michael Parkinson, I don't know if you know this, ladies and gentlemen, is now very much persona grata. Ladies and gentlemen, as you might have gathered from this bit of paper in my hand, I've knocked off a bit of a poem here. And this is apropos of Mike's presence in my homeland of Australia recently. You know, the odd critic got the knife out. What's new about that, Parky, eh?
Nothing.
But you know, there he is, my little mate Rupert gave him the job, and of course Rupert's, you know, the world isn't chock-a-block with Rupes, mates, is it? So the odd journo gets out the poison typewriter. And I feel, because Parky can't defend himself, a lot of people in show business can't defend themselves, can you? You know, you're comparatively defenceless. So I've written this poem, and it's called An Ode to Parky, ladies and gentlemen. I just want you to listen to it, if you will. It's by me. There's a bloke who's keenly watched and widely read, who always hits the nail on the head. He kicked off modestly in the UK, and he's a world celebrity today. If he gets nervous, well, it's never showed. His face is like a mile of rocky road. His crow's feet are the dried-up beds of smiles, and his best friends are aware that he's got piles of charm, pizzazz and British spunk and phlegm. Of TV interviewers, he's the gem. He could interview a Zulu or Iraqi and make it interesting. His name? Parky. Australian critics are all chippy guys. They tried to chop old Parky down to size. Some even said, go back where you come from. We don't want to learn charisma from a pom. But he knows the average Aussie journalist is following orders, jealous, or half pissed. He smiles, doesn't he? He does his job. He doesn't care. When you're the top, where do you go from there? So raise your glass of lager, rum or sake, whether you be a hun or nip or darky. And drink the health of my old cobber, Parky. Fair enough? Well, we're very lucky I'm like that. No worries?
All right. It's yours, Mike. Thank you for that. Thank you. The original manuscript. Now, so Les, one thing I have to ask you, of course, is about the long, lonely days you spend on the road. It must put a tremendous strain on your family life. And your wife must feel...
Look, it's a terrific strain on Gwen. I don't much talk about Lady Gwen. I don't talk about my wife much. I hardly ever think about her, as a matter of fact. But now you've reminded me, she's sitting back there in Australia. She's a bit of a grass widow, as a matter of fact. You know, she keeps a very, very low profile. One of the lowest profiles I've ever seen. But it's home duties for her, you know. But in my job, I don't see the little woman as much as I'd like to. But in a way, that's cemented our relationship. And I don't know, I'd like little Mary Parky in on this because she'd have her own tale to tell. But ladies and gentlemen, There's a lot of women out there, not just in the studio audience, but watching this show. And I'm, this old Les being serious, you know, for a moment, because I'm a pretty light-hearted old beggar, but I've got a serious streak to me. And there's a lot of lonely women who wait. And I've dedicated a song to them. Yeah. Not many people think I can sing, and I'm going to prove it to you now. This is a song. It's a song dedicated. It's a song dedicated to my wife, Lady Patterson, amongst others. It's got a nice little lilt to it. You know, it's a case of, I reckon it's a case of eat your heart out, George Melly, as far as I'm concerned. I feel a song coming on, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Me job takes me miles over land and sea, but home is the place I'm always longing to be. There's a little old Sheila waiting for me, and she's my old lady. The years have rolled by since she was a bride. Now and then I enjoy a little bit on the side. She might smell a rat, but she's got plenty of pride, 'cause she's my old lady. I sometimes forget to sling her a quid. She never gets too much love, but no matter how I treat the poor old cow, me dinner's always in the oven. Oh, cripes, I've tried on that parking. I'll have to run it again, fellas. All right, fellas. No worries, let's hear it. I might have been away for 6 months or more, but when I stick me key in her old front door, she's down there scrubbing the kitchen floor, 'cause she's my old lady. The bloom of youth, and I must say she started looking at the last time I saw a head like hers. It probably had a hook in it, but I don't care if she's as ugly as sin. I love every hair on her dear old chin as she washes the Valium down with the gin. She's mine, old lady. Thank you. No worries. No worries. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed. Not bad, eh? Very good. Very good. Proper trick. Thanks, Mike.
Now, have you...
Shagged out, son.
Have you got anybody...
Just feel as I've done 3 rounds with a revolving door.
Have you got anybody with you on this trip? Are you accompanied?
Oh, I've just got my research assistant.
Research assistant?
Little girl Friday. Lovely. How are you, darling? Yes, sir.
Where did you find her?
Well, she's an Australian lass. She's from the outback. I've had her for the last day and a half, as a matter of fact. She jetted over here to join me. I've got a bit of a turnover in secretaries, I have to be quite frank with you, Michael. It's the pressure, you see. Tremendous pressure these women are under. But her name is Clivine Jamesagong, as a matter of fact. It's an old Australian name.
Now, tell me, finally, Celeste, and thank you for your efforts tonight, spreading a bit of culture in our direction. Celeste. What? Will you in fact stay, do you think, while, or for Dame Edna, who is about to make an appearance?
Well, I will, but I wouldn't mind just nipping the amenity.
The dunny.
The dunny.
The dunny.
Is that a British expression as well for
It
the
is.
old, you know?
Yeah, that's it.
Huh? No worries. Isn't it incredible, the cultural links between our countries? I wouldn't mind nipping into powder my nose, Parky. I'll be back later.
All right.
Good luck.
Well,
It's been a big pleasure.
Thank you.
A big pleasure. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So let's back.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good on you, Mike.
Well, my final guest tonight is one of the great names of entertainment. 20 years ago, she was a simple housewife in Moonee Ponds, a suburb of Melbourne, Australia. Since then, under the kindly and skillful direction of Mr. Humphries, she first became a superstar and is now a megastar. Next week, she offers herself for an evening's intercourse at the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. But she's found time to break away from rehearsals to give us a preview of her own unique brand of wit and wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, Dame Edna Everage. Hello, Dame.
Here we are again. Isn't it spooky?
You've always worn a long frock on the previous occasions you've been on my show. It's the first time I've seen your legs.
Well, I have very, very nice legs, though I say it myself, ladies. And I'm not a bit ashamed to show them off, and I think I'm very lucky at my age to have them.
That's true, yes, in any shape or form. This is very interesting. You've got a little koala bear there.
Yes, it's a marsupial frock. Isn't it gorgeous? It was designed by my son, Kenny, and it's beautiful. I'll have to just stand up for a minute. You see, it's a gum tree creeping up the side there. And then there's little koala bears, one of my most favourite marsupials, next to the wombat. It's got a little pouch there, you see, the koala is a pocket. Isn't that a fashion point? And I bet the Emmanuels copy me. I bet they will, you naughty little Emmanuels.
Are you a fashion trendsetter?
I am. Women copy me slavishly.
Do
Michael,
they?
do. Oh, fancy being on the show again. Last time it was, of course, with little Gloria Swanson.
That's right.
And the questions I got asked after her.
Really?
People wondered if she was really a woman. They were saying, is she or isn't she, you know, but she's up. Wasn't she, and still is to some extent, a marvel?
She is. Absolutely.
Yes, of course I never had a silent period like she did, but I don't think she's marvellous all the same. I belong more to the epoch of sound.
Yes, you do. Well, you're up to date and modern. A trendsetter, as we said.
Oh, look.
You mentioned Dame Edna there. If I could get us up to date. What's the matter?
I can't keep this a secret any longer, Michael. I've got a little friend I'm very, very close to, my bridesmaid, Madge Alsop. And she's sitting back there. She's such a fan of yours, this woman. If she could just sit in on our little interview. I'm just going to sit her here. You might have to give up your seat. I'll just go and get her. My bridesmaid, Madge Alsop, don't worry about her. She's had a lot of surgery, cosmetic surgery. Madge, darling. Come on, darling. Madge Alsop, ladies and gentlemen. This is your idol. I'll take no notice of her, Michael. Where can we sit her? Can you bring a little seat
can I have
up
a chair
here?
for
I'm
Madge?
afraid I might have thrown you, Marky.
I didn't think...
I don't want to disrupt the show.
What happened to her face?
Just sit her there. Sit down, darling. Her face is of no importance whatever. She's a vain thing.
Excuse me,
Sit
Madge.
down.
Now, could you stand up a minute so we can move you over a bit?
Oh, dear me, I think we can cut all this from the film.
Not at all. No, indeed not.
We're going out live, I suddenly remembered.
That's right.
However, she's a very vain woman. She had radical cosmetic surgery, Mike. And, of course, she wasn't satisfied with what she had. You know, you can pick your face now. You go to see the plastic surgeon and you've got a choice, you know, with quite a few old megastars, Farrah Fawcett Major or whatever. And I think she accidentally picked Broderick Crawford. I think so. However, you know, I'm not like a lot of Australians who come here and get whatever they can for nothing. And incidentally, those of you who just tuned in, I am an Australian. And I'm a very, very proud British subject above all, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm a citizen of the world, basically, Mike. And...
I'm a bit concerned about Madge, though. I mean, will she be all right?
She's perfectly all right. She's completely dependent on me since her husband, Doug, passed on.
Really?
Well, he perished.
Did he? In what circumstance?
He was left out in the rain, unfortunately. But, no, I'm teasing. Madge has insisted on having another little op. And so I did it on my Dinah's card since she's been over here. And, of course, the bandages, it's all healed up, but no one can dare to take bandages. I've taken her along to the British Museum to the Egyptology department. However, she'll be all right. She's met you, and I think that's the main thing.
That will
She'll
buck her
just
up, will
sit
it?
there. She'll be all right.
All right. How do you know if she's happy or not?
Oh, I don't know. She feeds. Well, I give her a little dish once a day.
Because it's yet another burden you have to carry on your shoulders, isn't it? Because Norm's been ill these many years now, your husband, Norm. I'm sorry if I'm... Do you mind
My
talking
husband
about...
has turned the corner, Mike.
Has he?
But I am worried about that because, of course, his prostate has been miniaturised now. Wonderful. What they do with a silicon chip these days is nobody's business. But I do have a lot of family worries, and I don't want to talk about them on the Parkinson show, and what a relief it must be, too, to have me on the show now. Les Patterson is not in a fit state to be in.
No, he's not, is he? He's a fairly extraordinary character, isn't he?
Please. I'm sorry.
You disapprove of that kind of
I do.
activity?
I'm sorry. It's not at all typical.
Isn't it?
On Saturday nights, perhaps, it's typical.
But what about this book? Would it be like Mummy Dearest? Would it be that
Well, it
sort
could be. Mummy Dearest. Well, that would be the book I write about Madge.
Yes.
She looks more like a mummy than a person, doesn't she? Now I worry I've got a daughter, too, who gives me a tremendous... Take the camera off her, for heaven's sake, will you? I certainly didn't invite Madge Allsop on to steal the show. I invited her on because I'm an old softy from way back. As my little viewers know, and my public here. What a lovely studio audience you've gathered together too, Michael.
All fans. You are now, of course, a one-woman industry, aren't you? I mean, all sorts of things built up around you. I mean, for instance, here we have, would you believe, a Dame Edna teapot.
Oh, yes, there's a lot
nice?
of merchandising. Isn't it lovely?
Isn't that lovely,
It's a
Dame?
funny expression, isn't it, on me, on this teapot? But it is gorgeous. A lovely little craftswoman made this in Australia, and it's been exhibited in Belgravia in little Dan Klein's art gallery.
Does it work?
It does. It pours
Right,
the tea.
yes.
It could have come from the nose, but I said no. It's too yucky, isn't it?
Yeah.
A cup of tea out of someone's nose. But it chumbles, see? Isn't that lovely?
It isn't nice.
Imagine that at a ladies' afternoon tea party.
It's
It's gorgeous, isn't it? It's me. It's a mood of me, isn't it, viewers? It is a mood of me.
So you have to be very
Beautiful
careful, of course, how you're
Bit of a
exploited.
one-off. I have to be very,
You have to
very
be,
careful because
obviously.
I have to ration myself. You know, I've been away from the West End of London for 3 years, more than that.
Really?
And I have to do that because, I just a little bit, I let a little bit out, and then I go away for a while, and I think that's the formula. It
Yes.
certainly is. It's the one that's paid off with me.
But obviously, if I can go back to something we were talking about earlier about Norm. Now, you mentioned Norm there, and it seems to me that things are not... Would Madge like a drink?
No, she can't.
She
straw,
can't.
we haven't got a straw.
Is she all right?
Michael, stop bringing her into it, will you? daughter Valmay is giving me a lot of worry. She's back in Australia. And again, with your mother a megastar, it's not easy. Now, this is not a thing that my audience can identify with very easily. But just imagine for a second that your mother was a megastar. Well, you can't, but imagine if she was. Valmay has had a little shoplifting experience.
Oh, dear.
Oh, yes.
Oh, dear.
And, of course, she modelled herself a little bit on Patty Hearst, too. She held up a bank the other day in Australia. Well, it wasn't in the news here. I had Margaret stop it, as a matter of fact. And here is me blurting it out on TV, but it's over and done with now. She held up a sperm bank, as a matter of fact. She did. There were secret cameras. She wants to be a one-parent family. She does. And she was in there. The secret cameras got one morning. Can you imagine looking at the paper and seeing your own daughter with a little rifle and sawn-off shotgun and people throwing test tubes at her? I don't know who she was looking. Warren, but there was a rumour Warren Beatty had made a deposit. I don't know. But she's troubled. Now, you see, we shouldn't laugh at this. This is something that can be aired on the Parky show, you know. You got little Barry Humphries going about this and that, you know. And I saw a human side to him. Frankly, I hadn't noticed before. Can I say that? Yes, I can. I can say whatever I like. But, you know, I'll say this now, that when you are in my position, and this is more so than you, Michael Parkinson, your life is a bit of an open book, and your family are open to public scrutiny. My son Kenny was lost the other day now. He was lost a bit like Mark Thatcher. It was spooky the way it was so parallel. He was doing he's got a flatmate called Clifford Smale. And he and Cliff were doing a bit of snorkelling. You know, they like to do a bit of snorkelling. And they were up at the Barrier Reef in Australia, which is beautiful coral up near Australia. It's a bit like a beautiful bit of costume jewellery pinned on the bodice of Australia. And they were swimming around there looking for coral. They make coral jewellery. Mm-hmm. This jewellery was made by them, as a matter of fact. This is the rare black coral of Queensland. And a little fashion tip for you ladies. And they were snorkelling around. My son was lost. Now, Norm couldn't go after him like old Dennis could, because of his machine. It would sink straight to the bottom. You see, really, there is no provision on a prostate governor for a snorkel. I'm sorry, there isn't. Or Norm would have been down there with the sharks and the jellyfish looking for Kenny. He vanished off the face of the earth, and I gave him a good old smack, as I advised Margaret to give Mark, and she has.
She has, has she? You have that.
But you see, I don't divulge things. I can say that much about what royalty says to me, and they're watching, incidentally. They rang me.
Are they tuned in?
They rang me and said they were. Now, what other guest of yours has been phoned just before the show by the royal family to say they're watching? The answer's simple.
No, not a simple, not a single one. Well, you're the biggest star I've ever had on this show. Can I ask you? Do we say hello to?
No, I'm talking to them now.
Oh, to them? Oh, have you got a message for them?
No, we communicate in a different way altogether. We do, and this is why they like me, because they know their privacy is inviolate with me. Continue.
Is she all right? No, really, she worries me.
Perfectly all right,
She's not died, has she? She's not behind those bandages.
No such luck, I'm afraid.
Let me finally ask you about this new development in your career since last we met. That is this...
Haven't got lippy on my teeth, have I, viewers?
No, you haven't. There's this thing about you singing. You... Dear Madam. Singing, yes. You've recently been at the Albert Hall.
I was at the Royal Alfred Hall in, last September now. What a wonderful old venue that is, isn't it? Acoustically, a bit of a problem, but they've made a lovely record of it. And,
you were with a huge symphony orchestra?
I had the London Symphony Orchestra backing me, and, you know, it makes you feel like a woman with them behind you. It really does. I feel a cantata coming on.
Oh.
That's the cue we're supposed to say, or the piano wouldn't know when to come in.
You old pro.
You see, I'm a bit of an old pro from way back, aren't I? When you look at me now, as most of you are, it's hard to believe that this megastar was once an unempty thief like you. When you look at my tiara, and you look at my frock, you're looking at a woman who's learned to take stock. For I have my secret moments too. Born on the wrong side of the track, some evil critic said. But now that I'm paying super tax, those tired old hacks can drop dead. It's been years since I burst my girlhood bonds, but I'll never be ashamed of moony ponds. And when I'm alone in my luxury suite, there's a question I hear my heart repeat. Why do I love Australia? Why does it grab me so? Life was so sunny and informal when my husband Norm was normal and my career was in embryo. But the day dawned when I left Australia for England across the sea. And though I'm now a household name, I will never be the same. Australia's past see you at the old Theatre Royal Drury Lane. Little commercial, why not?
Right, well, that's it then for tonight. That's all we have time for, sadly. My thanks to everyone concerned.
Look at that spooky old figure.
Well, I'm worried about
I can't even think she's excited under all that.
Well, my thanks to Madge. Hope she gets better. My thanks to Barry Humphries. To Les Patterson and assistants. Well, thanks to Carl Davis, to the Mike Sam singers, and of course to you, Dame Edna Everage.
Thanks, it was lots and lots of fun.
What I'd like to do now is go out with a reprise.
Oh, why not?
Do you have reprise in Australia?
A reprise? Not in public, I don't think.
Mr. Davis, sir.